In 1910, when Malinowski began to study anthropology, it was the Australian Aborigines that were under particular scrutiny. Reports told of promiscuity and multiple sexual partners. It was the Aborigines' apparent lack of any family structure that confirmed their place at the base of social evolution. But Malinowski wasn't impressed with this conclusion.
Everyone acquainted with ethnographic information in general, and that of Australia and its Aborigines in particular, knows how ambiguous and confused it is on nearly every point.
Keen to get ahead in his new line of work, Malinowski took a thorough look at all the data on Aboriginal family life.
He looks at all this material, at the Australian material. He looks at censuses. He looks at photographs. He looks at descriptions of who are interacting with whom in the villages.
And his research led him to a radically different conclusion.
He says, well, look, whatever these people are telling you, it's quite clear that they are living in something very much like what we would call families. You have a man with one or two, sometimes three women whom he's living with on a long-term basis, over whom he has more or less exclusive rights of various kinds, including sexual rights. Their children are very close to him. They live together in one or two adjoining huts. They cook together, they eat together. Well, that's a family. Malinowski said, it looks like a family, it talks like it's a family, even if it doesn't call itself a family.
This initial research confirmed his view that anthropology was riddled with prejudices and lacked rigor. Malinowski was one of those who concluded that anthropology needed a strong dose of scientific discipline. And with a degree in maths and physics, he had exactly the right credentials.
The work of scientifically trained observers, like myself, once seriously applied to anthropology, will yield results of surpassing value. So far, it has been done solely by amateurs, and therefore done, on the whole, indifferently.
Not only was Malinowski a scientist, but his peculiarly obsessive personality was ideally suited to the task ahead. Malinowski's life was one long struggle for personal perfection, both mentally and physically.
Particularly from reading the diaries, I thought that he had this really introspective side where he was, his diary, I think he saw it as a tool.
He was a perfectionist for himself. Yes. He wished to make his life perfect if he could.
He meticulously scrutinized every aspect of himself.
With me, the extremism in self-analysis is pathological, and it leads towards a morbid exaggeration.
First, there was his alarmist obsession with health.
He's such a hypochondriac. Pill bottles everywhere. Do you think that comes from being sick as a child?
I think he was a born hypochondriac, perhaps is the wrong word, but it's possible. You know, he's obviously a sensitive being, you know. but
putting it mildly.
Putting it mildly.
His nervous disposition was so extreme that Malinowski relied on the somewhat dubious panacea of the time, regular injections of arsenic. There were also the intricacies of Malinowski's complex mind.
There is a craving in me for the sensational, for the abnormal. I suspect ill of others. and imagine dreadful possibilities.
He says on one occasion in his diary is that I have a fear of pointed objects. Stickophobia, I call it. And fur, he didn't like touching fur coats or anything like that. Velvet and anything slippery, mud. Several times a day he'd rub his hands with hot water and soap.
In short, I suffer from a mania of paranoia and persecution. And all this goes hand in hand with my poor health and my bad nerves. Though perhaps the one feeds upon the other.
Malinowski's obsessive analysis of himself, combined with his scientific mind, would make him the man that could change anthropology. By 1914, the more forward-thinking of the profession were keen on their students taking the equivalent of an anthropological gap year. For Malinowski, this consisted of a grand tour of Australia and its remote territories. Leaving behind his beloved mother, he set off on a busy schedule with many stop-offs. After 3 months, Malinowski reached Papua New Guinea. Even today, it is a wild-looking land of jungle, swamp, and mysterious cultures.
Popular imagination, I suppose Papua was a dark, cannibal-ridden, a savage place. I mean, a real redoubt of savages. The government was always saying how difficult it was, to pacify this place. Travel writers were reporting on it as being a rather malaria-ridden, unhealthy place for Europeans, but fascinating with these colourful customs and colourful natives.
This dark place was the essence of all things primitive and a dream come true for the young anthropologist. But being a sickly, self-obsessed hypochondriac, Papua New Guinea was also Malinowski's own private hell.
He knew he was entering into a dangerous place. What worried him, I think, more than anything else was the heat.
I have a strong fear of the tropics, an abhorrence of heat and sultriness. Overtaxed heart, nervousness. There is a taste in my mouth and a pain behind my eyes. I think I may vomit. If I do, I'm sure it is tuberculosis. Now, perhaps the lack of exercise is at the root of this condition. Or the tinned food. I must get more exercise, especially in the morning and in the evening. Arsenic is indispensable, but I must not exaggerate the quinine. Also a somewhat congested nose and throat. I am beginning to believe the hypothesis that I am about to die.